The last patient left an hour ago, the scent of antiseptic and stale coffee clinging to the air, a familiar comfort in the quiet hum of the clinic. I'm wiping down the counter, my movements automatic, the only sound the distant chirping of crickets outside the insulated walls. My breath fogs slightly on the cool glass as I glance out into the inky blackness of the rural road, a ribbon of asphalt swallowed by the dense forest. It's a quiet night, too quiet, the kind of stillness that always feels like a prelude to something else, something unsettling. A sudden, blinding flash of headlights rips through the darkness, growing rapidly, a predator bearing down on its prey. My heart leaps into my throat, a cold dread washing over me as a black SUV, sleek and menacing, screeches to an abrupt halt just outside, its engine still rumbling like a caged beast. Two hulking figures in dark suits emerge, their faces grim, their eyes scanning the empty landscape with an unnerving intensity that speaks of immediate danger. Between them, a third man is cradled, bleeding profusely, his expensive suit torn and soaked. He's the last man I ever expected to see again, the man whose face has haunted my nightmares for a year, the man who signed my death warrant. And now, he's dying on my doorstep. The metallic tang of blood, sharp and acrid, immediately assaults my senses as they haul him through the clinic doors, the sterile air now tainted with the raw scent of violence. My hands, which moments ago were calmly wiping surfaces, now clench into fists, nails digging into my palms, a desperate attempt to ground myself against the tidal wave of terror threatening to engulf me. The two men, silent and imposing, lay their leader, a man whose name I dare not even whisper in my thoughts, onto the examination table with a chilling efficiency that speaks volumes of their training and their ruthless world. My professional instincts, honed over years of medical practice, kick in, a fragile shield against the personal horror unfolding before me. I force myself to breathe, to focus, to see only the patient, not the monster from my past. The clinic, usually a sanctuary of healing, now feels like a trap, its fluorescent lights casting a harsh, unforgiving glow on the scene, illuminating every drop of crimson. My gaze sweeps over him, assessing the damage with a clinical detachment I didn't know I possessed, a desperate coping mechanism to keep the panic at bay. A gunshot wound high on the chest, dangerously close to the heart, and another, a glancing blow to the shoulder, already staining his pristine white shirt a grotesque shade of dark red. His breathing is shallow, ragged, each gasp a desperate struggle for air, a stark reminder of the fragile line between life and death that I, a doctor, am sworn to protect. The bodyguards stand like statues, their eyes never leaving me, a silent, suffocating pressure that makes the air thick and heavy, each second stretching into an eternity. Their presence is a constant, chilling reminder that failure is not an option. Not for him, and certainly not for me. Not if I want to see another sunrise. A year ago, his name was whispered in hushed tones, a death sentence delivered through intermediaries, a cold, calculated decree that shattered my world and forced me into hiding, into this isolated existence. Now, he lies vulnerable, his life in my hands, the ultimate irony twisting my gut into knots. The memory of that phone call, the chilling, dispassionate voice on the other end, still echoes in the quiet corners of my mind, a constant phantom limb of fear. I remember the frantic packing, the desperate flight, the endless nights spent looking over my shoulder, the paranoia a constant companion. This man, this powerful, ruthless man, had deemed me expendable, a loose end to be tied up, and now, fate, in its cruelest jest, had brought him back to me, not as an executioner, but as a supplicant. He needs immediate surgery, I state, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands, the words a lifeline to my professional self. I need my surgical kit, IV fluids and blood. Do you have his blood type? The questions tumble out, a torrent of medical urgency, a desperate attempt to assert some control over a situation that is spiraling rapidly beyond my grasp. The bodyguards exchange a glance, a silent communication passing between them, before one of them, a man with eyes like chips of ice, nods curtly. Oh, negative. We have a supply in the vehicle. His voice is a low rumble, devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to the frantic beat of my own heart. The efficiency of their operation, even in crisis, is terrifyingly impressive, a testament to their world. My mind races, calculating the risks, the limited resources of my small clinic, the impossible odds stacked against us. This isn't a routine appendectomy. This is a high-stakes, life-or-death operation on a man who has every reason to want me dead. Every instrument I pick up feels heavy, imbued with a terrifying significance. The sterile gleam of the scalpel reflects the harsh clinic lights, a cold, unforgiving mirror to my own conflicted emotions. My hands, though trembling internally, move with practiced precision, a testament to years of training, a muscle memory that overrides the screaming fear in my mind. I am a doctor, first and foremost, and in this moment, the Hippocratic oath feels like both a blessing and a curse, binding me to save the very man who sought to destroy me. The bodyguards, two hulking shadows, remain vigilant, their presence a suffocating blanket of unspoken threats. Their eyes follow my every move, scrutinizing each gesture, each decision, their silence more menacing than any shouted command. I can feel their impatience, their desperation, a palpable energy that vibrates in the air around us, making the very oxygen feel thin. They don't trust me, and why should they? They know who he is, what he represents, and the countless enemies he has made. They know the stakes, and they know that I, a civilian, am now caught in the crossfire, an unwilling participant in their brutal game. The weight of their expectations, their silent demands, presses down on me, threatening to crush me. As I prepare the operating field, the image of his face, cold and impassive, flashes in my mind, not as he is now, vulnerable and bleeding, but as he was in the grainy photograph I saw a year ago, the face of a man who commanded fear and loyalty in equal measure. The contrast is jarring, almost surreal. How could this powerful figure, this untouchable entity, be reduced to this state? It speaks volumes of the dangers he navigates, the treacherous currents of his world. And now, I am navigating them with him, tethered to his fate by a thread of blood and an oath. The irony is a bitter taste in my mouth, a constant reminder of the precariousness of my own existence. The wound is deep, ragged, a testament to the brutal efficiency of the weapon used against him. I work quickly, my movements precise, my focus absolute, pushing aside the personal vendetta that threatens to consume me. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor is the only sound that matters now, a fragile symphony of life clinging to existence. Each stitch, each clamp, each careful incision is a battle won, a small victory against the encroaching darkness. My brow is furrowed in concentration, a bead of sweat tracing a path down my temple, a testament to the intense pressure I am under. The air is thick with the smell of antiseptic, blood, and the unspoken fear that hangs heavy in the room, a palpable entity. His face, even in unconsciousness, retains an aura of formidable power. A grim set to his jaw, a faint scar above his left eyebrow, a roadmap of a life lived on the edge. I find myself studying him, not as a victim, but as a puzzle, a complex organism fighting for survival. The vulnerability of his body contrasts sharply with the reputation that precedes him, the stories whispered in shadows, the legends of his ruthlessness. It's a strange intimacy, this act of saving a life, especially when that life belongs to someone who once sought to end yours. The paradox is not lost on me, a constant, unsettling hum beneath the surface of my professional demeanor, a moral tightrope walk. The bodyguards, still silent, still watchful, occasionally communicate in low, guttural tones into their radios, their voices barely audible above the hum of the medical equipment. Their words are clipped, urgent, hinting at a larger, unseen conflict unfolding beyond the clinic walls, a world of shadows and violence that I am now unwillingly privy to. I catch snippets of phrases, perimeter secure, no visual, clean up, each word a chilling reminder of the dangerous game they play, and the precarious position I now occupy within it. My clinic, my sanctuary, has become a temporary outpost in their war, a fragile bubble of medical intervention surrounded by an ocean of unseen threats. My hands ache, my back protests, but I push through the pain, fueled by a potent cocktail of adrenaline and fear. The hours blur into a timeless continuum of sutures, transfusions, and careful monitoring. The initial shock has given way to a grim determination, a resolve to see this through, not for him, but for myself, for the doctor I am. If he dies on my table, what then? Will I be next? The question hangs heavy in the air, an unspoken threat that propels me forward, driving me to perform beyond my limits. The stakes are too high, the consequences too dire, to allow anything less than my absolute best, even for a man I despise. The wound is finally closed, the bleeding stemmed, the immediate crisis averted. A wave of exhaustion washes over me, leaving me feeling hollowed out, drained. But the relief is fleeting, quickly replaced by a fresh surge of anxiety. He is stable for now, but far from out of danger. The next few hours will be critical, a delicate dance between recovery and relapse. I step back, wiping a bead of sweat from my brow with the back of my gloved hand, my eyes scanning the monitors, searching for any sign of trouble. The rhythmic beeping of the machines is now a comforting sound, a testament to the fragile life I have managed to preserve, at least for the moment. One of the bodyguards, the one with the ice-chip eyes, steps forward, his gaze piercing, unreadable. "He will live?" he asks, his voice still low, but with an underlying current of demand, a subtle threat woven into the question. I meet his gaze, refusing to flinch, refusing to show the fear that still gnaws at me. He's stable. The next 12 hours are crucial. He needs constant monitoring, and he needs to be moved to a proper facility as soon as he's strong enough. My words are firm, authoritative, a desperate attempt to reclaim some semblance of control, to assert my medical authority in a situation where I have none. The silence that follows is deafening, pregnant with unspoken implications. I watch him, this man who once held my life in his hands, now utterly dependent on mine. His chest rises and falls with a steady, if shallow, rhythm, a testament to the fragile victory I have just achieved. The irony of the situation is a bitter pill to swallow, a constant reminder of the twisted path my life has taken. I, Elena Petrova, a doctor sworn to heal, am now safeguarding the life of a man who once sought to silence me forever. The weight of this paradox presses down on me, a heavy burden that threatens to suffocate me. The night is far from over, and I know, with a chilling certainty, that my ordeal has only just begun. The clinic, once a haven of quiet solitude, now feels like a cage, its walls closing in around me, trapping me with the very people I sought to escape. The sterile white of the examination room seems to mock the bloodstains on the floor, a stark contrast between the world I inhabit and the one that has violently intruded upon it. I glance at the clock, the digital numbers glowing an eerie green, marking the passage of time, each second a step further into an unknown and terrifying future. The silence of the bodyguards is a constant, unnerving presence, a reminder that I am under their watchful eye, a prisoner in my own domain, my fate inextricably linked to the man on the table. As the first faint streaks of dawn begin to paint the sky outside, a pale, anemic light filtering through the clinic windows, I feel a profound sense of exhaustion settle deep into my bones. The adrenaline that had propelled me through the night begins to wane, leaving behind a hollow ache, a weariness that goes beyond the physical. I know with a chilling certainty that my life, as I knew it, is irrevocably altered. The man on the table, still unconscious, still breathing, is a living, breathing testament to the fact that the past is never truly buried, and sometimes it comes back to haunt you in the most unexpected and terrifying ways. My survival, I realize, depends entirely on his. The initial stabilization efforts had bought us time, a fragile reprieve in the relentless march of his critical condition, but the clock was still ticking, each second a potential harbinger of relapse. His vital signs, though improved, remained tenuous, a delicate balance that could tip at any moment, sending us spiraling back into the abyss of medical emergency. I moved with a practiced, almost robotic efficiency, checking IV drips, adjusting monitors, my eyes constantly scanning the readouts, searching for any subtle deviation that might signal impending disaster. The bodyguards, their faces etched with a grim determination, watched my every move, their silent scrutiny a constant, suffocating pressure that made the air thick with unspoken demands. Their impatience was a palpable force, a low hum of anxiety that vibrated beneath the surface of their stoic exteriors, a constant reminder of the precariousness of my situation. My internal struggle raged, a tempest of conflicting emotions, the Hippocratic oath battling against the raw, visceral memory of his past transgression. How could I, a healer, dedicate every fiber of my being to saving a man who had so casually ordered my demise? The irony was a bitter metallic taste in my mouth, a constant reminder of the moral tightrope I was forced to walk. Each medical decision, each life-saving intervention was a battle fought not just against his injuries, but against the screaming protest of my own conscience. The weight of his past, the shadow of his power, hung heavy in the sterile air, a constant oppressive presence that threatened to crush me beneath its immense burden, forcing me to confront my deepest fears and ethical boundaries. A sudden, alarming drop in his blood pressure sent a jolt of adrenaline through me, snapping me back to the immediate crisis. "He's crashing!" I barked, my voice sharp with urgency, the words cutting through the tense silence of the room. "I need more fluids now, and prepare for a second transfusion." The bodyguards, usually so impassive, reacted with a flicker of alarm in their eyes, their movements becoming more agitated, their hushed conversations into their radios growing more frantic. The clinic's limited resources, usually sufficient for routine emergencies, were now stretched to their breaking point, each piece of equipment pushed to its maximum capacity, a stark reminder of the inadequacy of my small, isolated practice in the face of such a profound medical crisis. The lack of specialized equipment was a constant, gnawing frustration, a tangible barrier to providing the optimal care he desperately needed. I improvised, making do with what I had, my medical ingenuity pushed to its absolute limits, each solution a desperate gamble against time and circumstance. The thought of needing to transfer him, of exposing him to the outside world, was a terrifying prospect, fraught with unimaginable risks, not just for him, but for me. The bodyguards, sensing my dilemma, exchanged worried glances, their silent communication a clear indication that they understood the inherent dangers of moving their wounded leader. The clinic, once a sanctuary, now felt like a fragile fortress, constantly under siege. He stirred then, a low groan escaping his lips, his eyes fluttering open for a brief, disoriented moment. His gaze, clouded with pain and confusion, flickered over my face, a flicker of recognition, a ghost of a memory, passing through his eyes before they closed again, succumbing to the powerful sedatives. That fleeting moment, that brief connection, sent a shiver down my spine, a chilling reminder that he was not just a patient, but the man who had once held my fate in his hands. The vulnerability of his current state was a stark contrast to the ruthless power he wielded, a paradox that continued to unsettle me, making my hands tremble slightly as I adjusted his oxygen mask, a silent testament to the profound impact of his presence. The hushed conversations of the bodyguards, their voices barely above a whisper, were a constant backdrop to my frantic efforts, a low thrum of paranoia that permeated the air. I strained to catch snippets of their words, piecing together fragments of information, trying to understand the nature of the attack, the identity of his assailants. "Internal job," I heard one murmur, his voice laced with a cold fury. "A betrayal." The words sent a fresh wave of dread through me. If his own people had turned on him, what hope did I, an outsider, have? The realization that I was now caught in the crosshairs of a ruthless power struggle, a pawn in a game far beyond my comprehension, was a chilling, unsettling thought that tightened its icy grip around my heart. The moral tightrope I walked grew ever thinner, each step fraught with peril, each decision a weighty ethical dilemma. Saving him meant prolonging the life of a man who had caused immense suffering, a man who represented everything I abhorred, but letting him die, even passively, would be a betrayal of my oath, a surrender to the very darkness I fought against. The conflict raged within me, a silent battle of conscience that threatened to tear me apart. My hands, though steady in their medical tasks, felt heavy, burdened by the immense responsibility, the impossible choice forced upon me by circumstance. The sterile environment of the clinic felt like a crucible, forging a new, darker understanding of my own moral boundaries. Exhaustion, a heavy, suffocating blanket began to settle over me, dragging at my limbs, blurring the edges of my vision. The relentless pressure, the constant vigilance, the sheer physical and emotional toll of the night were taking their toll. My eyes burned, my muscles ached, but I pushed through, fueled by a potent cocktail of adrenaline and a primal instinct for survival. There was no escape, no respite, only the endless demands of the moment, the unwavering need to keep him alive. The clinic, once a place of quiet contemplation, had become a relentless battlefield, and I, an unwilling combatant, was fighting for more than just his life. I was fighting for my own, for my very soul. A specific, difficult medical decision loomed, a choice between two risky procedures, each with its own set of potentially fatal complications. I weighed the options, my mind racing, calculating probabilities, drawing on every ounce of my medical knowledge and experience. The bodyguards, sensing the gravity of the moment, watched me with an intensity that was almost unbearable, their silent pressure a constant reminder of the unforgiving consequences of failure. There was no room for error, no margin for hesitation. The life of their leader, and by extension, my own, hung precariously in the balance, dependent on my ability to make the right call, under duress, with limited resources. The clinic, once a symbol of my independence, my quiet escape, now felt like a cage, its walls closing in around me, trapping me with the very people I sought to avoid. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden threat, every creak of the old building a potential harbinger of danger. The outside world, a place I once navigated with a semblance of freedom, now felt like a hostile, unforgiving landscape, teeming with unseen enemies and unknown dangers. I was isolated, cut off, a solitary figure caught in a web of intrigue and violence, my fate inextricably linked to the man lying unconscious on my operating table, a silent testament to the profound and terrifying shift in my reality. The boss, even in his unconscious state, exuded an aura of formidable power, a silent, commanding presence that filled the room. His breathing, though still shallow, had stabilized, a fragile rhythm that spoke of a life clinging tenaciously to existence. I found myself observing him, not just as a patient, but as a symbol, a living embodiment of the ruthless world that had violently intruded upon my quiet life. The paradox of his vulnerability and his immense power was a constant source of fascination and dread, a chilling reminder of the complex and dangerous forces at play, forces that I was now, unwillingly, a part of. The bodyguards, their faces grim and unyielding, maintained their silent vigil, their eyes darting constantly towards the clinic doors, towards the windows, towards every potential point of entry. Their paranoia was infectious, a subtle poison seeping into the very fabric of the clinic, making me jump at every unfamiliar sound, every rustle of leaves outside. I could feel the tension radiating from them, a palpable energy that spoke of constant threat, of enemies lurking in the shadows, waiting for their moment to strike. My own fear, a cold, hard knot in my stomach, intensified with each passing moment, a chilling understanding that the danger was far from over. My hands, though weary, continued their work, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the stubborn refusal to surrender in the face of overwhelming odds. Each adjustment to the IV, each check of the monitors, was a small act of defiance against the forces that sought to control my fate. I was a doctor, and I would perform my duty, even if it meant saving the life of my tormentor. The professional detachment, once a fragile shield, had now become a hardened shell, protecting me from the emotional turmoil that threatened to incapacitate me. This was a battle of wills, a test of endurance, and I was determined not to break. The dawning realization that this wasn't just about saving him, but about navigating a treacherous war, settled heavily in my mind. A cold, hard truth. I was no longer just a doctor. I was an unwilling participant, a pawn in a dangerous game where the stakes were life and death, and the rules were written in blood. My quiet life, my carefully constructed sanctuary, had been irrevocably shattered, replaced by a new, terrifying reality. The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, fraught with peril, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that there was no turning back, no escape from the intricate web of deceit and violence that now entangled me. The hours crawled by, each minute stretching into an eternity, marked by the rhythmic beeping of the machines and the hushed whispers of the bodyguards. The clinic, once a place of healing, had been transformed into a tense, claustrophobic waiting room, a temporary holding cell between life and death, between one crisis and the next. The air was thick with unspoken fears, with the lingering scent of blood and antiseptic, a potent cocktail that assaulted my senses and kept me on edge. I felt like a prisoner, bound by circumstance, by an oath, and by the chilling knowledge that my own survival was now inextricably linked to the man I was fighting to save. As the night slowly gave way to the pale, anemic light of dawn, casting long, eerie shadows across the clinic floor, I knew that the immediate medical crisis had passed, but the larger, more insidious threat remained. He was stable for now, but the battle was far from over. The quiet hum of the machines, once a source of comfort, now felt like a ticking clock, counting down to an unknown future. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally drained, but a new resolve, cold and hard, had begun to form within me. I would survive this, I vowed, and I would find a way out of this nightmare no matter the cost. A sudden, violent tremor shook the clinic, rattling the medical instruments on their trays and sending a jolt of pure terror through my already frayed nerves. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor flatlined for a terrifying second before sputtering back to life, a stark reminder of the fragile hold he had on existence. My eyes darted to the boss, his face pale and clammy, his breathing shallow and erratic, a clear sign that the external chaos was directly impacting his already critical condition. The bodyguards, their faces contorted with alarm, immediately drew their weapons, the metallic click of safeties disengaging echoing ominously in the suddenly silent room. This was it, the moment of truth, the climax of the night's terrifying ordeal, and I was caught squarely in the middle, a doctor forced to navigate a war zone. The clinic's front door, a sturdy oak barrier, splintered inward with a deafening crash, showering the reception area with wood fragments and plaster dust. Gunfire erupted, a cacophony of explosions that ripped through the quiet night, each shot a hammer blow against the fragile peace we had maintained. The bodyguards, their training kicking in with brutal efficiency, returned fire, their movements fluid and deadly, transforming the sterile clinic into a chaotic battlefield. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure terror as I instinctively ducked behind the examination table, shielding the unconscious boss with my own body, a desperate, almost suicidal act of protection driven by an instinct I couldn't explain. The air filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the metallic tang of fresh blood, a sickening cocktail that assaulted my senses. A bullet whizzed past my ear, so close I felt the rush of air, sending a searing jolt of adrenaline through my veins, a stark reminder of my own mortality. The boss's monitors began to shriek, a piercing, insistent alarm that cut through the din of gunfire, signaling a rapid deterioration in his condition. His blood pressure plummeted, his heart rate spiked erratically, a clear indication that the stress and trauma of the attack were pushing him closer to the brink. I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that if I didn't act immediately, if I didn't somehow stabilize him amidst this chaos, all my efforts would have been for naught. My hands, though trembling uncontrollably, reached for the emergency medications, my mind racing to formulate a plan, a desperate gamble against time and overwhelming odds. "He's going into shock," I screamed, my voice barely audible above the relentless gunfire. my words a desperate plea for understanding, for space, for a moment of calm in the storm. I need more light, and I need you to keep them away from this room. My eyes met those of the ice chip bodyguard, a silent, desperate communication passing between us, a shared understanding of the immediate life-or-death stakes. He nodded grimly, his face a mask of grim determination, before barking orders into his radio, his voice a low, guttural growl that somehow cut through the chaos. The clinic, once a sanctuary, was now a war zone, and I, a doctor, was forced to fight on two fronts, against his injuries and against the unseen enemies outside. The sounds of the battle intensified, the shattering of glass, the thud of bodies, the guttural shouts of men engaged in a desperate fight for survival. I could hear the distinct thwack of a body hitting the wall just outside the operating room, followed by a choked gasp, a chilling reminder of the brutal reality unfolding just beyond my immediate vision. My hands, though still shaking, moved with a practiced precision, injecting the life-saving medications, adjusting the oxygen flow, my focus absolute, my mind a laser beam on the task at hand. The boss's life, and by extension my own, hung precariously in the balance, dependent on my ability to maintain a fragile medical equilibrium amidst the chaos. A sudden, deafening explosion rocked the entire building, sending a fresh wave of debris raining down from the ceiling, momentarily plunging the room into darkness as the power flickered and died. The emergency lights, dim and flickering, cast long, eerie shadows across the room, transforming the familiar clinic into a nightmarish landscape. The heart monitor, now running on battery, continued its frantic beeping, a solitary beacon of life in the encroaching darkness. My breath hitched in my throat, a cold dread washing over me as I realized the gravity of the situation. We were under siege, cut off, and the chances of survival, for any of us, were rapidly diminishing with each passing second. "Get him out of here!" I yelled, my voice raw with desperation, the words torn from my throat. "He won't survive another hit!" The ice chip bodyguard, his face streaked with grime and blood, his eyes burning with a fierce intensity, hesitated for a fraction of a second, torn between protecting his leader and engaging the enemy. It was a moment of profound, terrifying indecision, a split second that felt like an eternity, as the fate of everyone in the clinic hung precariously in the balance. The sounds of the fight were drawing closer, the heavy thud of boots on the floor, the metallic clang of weapons, a chilling symphony of impending doom that tightened its icy grip around my heart. He made his choice. With a guttural roar, he grabbed the boss, slinging his unconscious body over his shoulder with surprising ease, a testament to his immense strength. "Move, now," he commanded, his voice a low, urgent growl, his eyes sweeping the room, searching for an escape route. I grabbed my emergency medical bag, a desperate attempt to salvage what little I could, my mind racing to keep up with the sudden, frantic shift in plans. The clinic, my sanctuary, was now a death trap, and we were fleeing, abandoning the sterile environment for the unknown dangers of the outside world, a terrifying leap of faith into the heart of the storm. We burst through a back door, a hidden exit I rarely used, into the cold, damp night, the sounds of gunfire and shouting still echoing behind us, a chilling reminder of the chaos we had just escaped. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and pine needles, a stark contrast to the acrid scent of gunpowder that still clung to my clothes. The bodyguard, surprisingly agile despite his heavy burden, moved with a silent, predatory grace, his eyes constantly scanning the tree line, searching for any sign of pursuit, any lurking threat in the impenetrable darkness of the forest. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure terror, as I struggled to keep pace, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The boss, still unconscious, his head lolling against the bodyguard's shoulder, looked impossibly vulnerable, a stark contrast to the ruthless image he projected. The irony of the situation was a bitter taste in my mouth. I was running for my life, protecting the very man who had once sought to end it, a twisted dance with destiny that defied all logic. My medical bag, heavy and cumbersome, swung awkwardly against my hip, a constant reminder of my professional duty, even in the face of such overwhelming personal danger. The forest, usually a place of quiet solitude, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and unseen threats, each rustle of leaves a potential ambush. A sudden, sharp crack of a twig behind us sent a fresh wave of terror through me, making me stumble, my heart leaping into my throat. The bodyguard, his reflexes honed by years of living on the edge, spun around, his weapon raised, his eyes narrowed, scanning the darkness with an intensity that spoke of immediate, deadly intent. It was a false alarm, a small animal scurrying through the undergrowth, but the moment of pure, unadulterated fear left me breathless, my legs weak, my body trembling uncontrollably. The paranoia was infectious, a subtle poison seeping into my very bones, making me jump at every shadow, every unfamiliar sound, a constant, gnawing anxiety. We ran deeper into the forest, the dense canopy of trees blocking out the faint light of the moon, plunging us into an almost absolute darkness. The uneven terrain, littered with roots and rocks, made every step a treacherous gamble, a constant threat of a twisted ankle or a painful fall. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed in protest, but I pushed through the pain, driven by a primal instinct for survival, a desperate need to escape the nightmare that had violently intruded upon my life. The bodyguard, his breathing surprisingly even, continued his relentless pace, a silent, unyielding force, his focus absolute, his determination unwavering, a stark contrast to my own frantic desperation. The boss, despite the brutal journey, remained stable, a testament to his formidable constitution and my desperate medical interventions. His life, though still hanging by a thread, had been pulled back from the brink, at least for the moment, but the immediate threat had been replaced by a new, more insidious danger, the unknown. We were lost in the wilderness, hunted, vulnerable, with no clear destination, no safe haven in sight. The clinic, though destroyed, had at least offered the illusion of safety, the familiarity of my own domain. Now, we were truly alone, exposed to the elements, and to the relentless pursuit of his enemies, a terrifying reality that tightened its icy grip around my heart. The climax of the night's terrifying ordeal had passed, leaving behind a trail of destruction and a profound sense of exhaustion. The adrenaline that had propelled me through the chaos began to wane, leaving me feeling hollowed out, drained, both physically and emotionally. But the relief was fleeting, quickly replaced by a fresh surge of anxiety. We had survived the immediate attack, but the larger war still raged, and I was now an unwilling combatant, deeply entangled in a conflict far beyond my comprehension. The forest, once a symbol of peace, now felt like a vast, unforgiving labyrinth, and I, a doctor, was lost within its treacherous depths, my fate inextricably linked to the man I had just saved. My legs finally gave out, sending me sprawling onto the cold, damp earth, my breath coming in ragged, painful gasps. The bodyguard, without a word, stopped, his eyes scanning the darkness, his senses alert to any sign of pursuit. He gently lowered the boss to the ground, his movements surprisingly tender for a man of such brutal efficiency. I lay there, gasping for air, my body screaming in protest, my mind a whirlwind of fear, exhaustion, and a dawning, chilling realization. The clinic was gone. My old life was gone, and I was now irrevocably bound to this man, to his world, to his enemies. There was no going back, only forward, into the heart of the storm. As the first faint streaks of pre-dawn light began to filter through the dense canopy of trees, casting long, eerie shadows across the forest floor, I looked at the boss, still unconscious, still vulnerable, and a cold, hard resolve began to form within me. I had saved his life, but at what cost? My own life had been shattered, my sanctuary destroyed, and I was now a fugitive, a doctor caught in a war she never asked for. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth, a constant reminder of the profound and terrifying shift in my reality. The night was over, but the nightmare, I knew with chilling certainty, had only just begun, and I was now a permanent, unwilling player in his deadly game. The immediate aftermath of the forest escape was a blur of raw survival, a desperate scramble for safety in the unforgiving wilderness. The clinic, my sanctuary, was a smoldering ruin in my mind, its destruction a stark symbol of the life I had lost, irrevocably shattered by the night's brutal intrusion. The boss, though stable, remained critically weak, his life hanging by a thread, a constant fragile reminder of the immense responsibility I now carried. His breathing, though more regular, was still shallow, each rise and fall of his chest a testament to the precariousness of his existence. My own body screamed in protest, every muscle aching, every nerve frayed, but the adrenaline, a potent and relentless force, continued to propel me forward, overriding the profound exhaustion that threatened to consume me entirely. The bodyguards, grim-faced and silent, regrouped with a chilling efficiency that spoke volumes of their training and their ruthless world. Their eyes, sharp and vigilant, constantly scanned the dense forest, searching for any sign of pursuit, any lurking threat in the encroaching dawn. Their hushed conversations, punctuated by clipped commands into their radios, painted a grim picture of the unfolding situation. The attack had been well coordinated, a clear message from powerful enemies, and the hunt for them, for us, was far from over. The paranoia was a palpable entity, a suffocating blanket that settled over us, making every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call, sound like an approaching threat, tightening its icy grip around my heart. The forest, though offering temporary concealment, was no longer a safe haven. It was a vast, unforgiving labyrinth, and we were exposed, vulnerable, hunted. The need for a new location, a more secure refuge, became paramount, a silent, urgent demand that hung heavy in the air. I knew with a chilling certainty that staying put was not an option, that the enemies who had so brutally attacked the clinic would not rest until their objective was achieved. The thought of moving him, of subjecting his fragile body to further trauma, sent a fresh wave of anxiety through me. But the alternative, remaining exposed, was a far more terrifying prospect, a guaranteed path to certain doom. A strange, almost unsettling bond began to form between me and the ice-chip bodyguard, the one who had carried the boss through the forest. His name, I learned, was Kale, spoken in a low, gruff tone when I asked for his assistance with the boss's IV. There was a silent, unspoken understanding between us, a shared burden of responsibility, a mutual recognition of the precariousness of our situation. He trusted my medical judgment implicitly, a surprising deference that cut through the initial hostility, and I, in turn, found myself relying on his stoic strength, his unwavering vigilance, a fragile alliance forged in the crucible of shared danger, a desperate partnership born of necessity. The boss, slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to stir, a faint flicker of awareness returning to his eyes. He groaned, a low, guttural sound of pain, his gaze unfocused, but there was a spark, a hint of his formidable will, that even in his weakened state was undeniable. He tried to speak, his lips moving soundlessly, his throat too dry, too raw, to form coherent words. I leaned closer, offering him a sip of water, my hand steady despite the tremor in my heart. His eyes met mine, a fleeting moment of intense, unreadable connection, a silent message passing between us, a recognition of the strange, twisted circumstances that had bound our fates together. The implications of the attack, the sheer audacity and brutality of it, began to sink in, a chilling realization that painted a grim picture of the forces arrayed against him. This wasn't just a random act of violence, it was a calculated strike, a declaration of war from powerful, ruthless enemies. Kale, in hushed tones, spoke of a rival faction, a betrayal from within his own ranks, a power struggle that had erupted into open warfare. The world I had stumbled into was far more complex, far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined, a labyrinth of shifting loyalties and deadly betrayals, and I, a doctor, was now an unwilling confidant, a pawn in their brutal game. My role, once purely medical, began to shift, subtly but irrevocably. I was no longer just a doctor. I was an unwilling participant, a witness, a repository of dangerous knowledge. Cale, in his quiet, watchful way, began to consult me, not just on the boss's medical condition, but on the logistics of their movements, the risks of their current location, the best way to ensure his continued survival. I found myself offering advice, making suggestions, my medical expertise now intertwined with the brutal realities of their world, a strange and unsettling fusion of healing and survival, of life and death. The lines between my professional and personal life had blurred beyond recognition. The external world, once a place of relative safety, now felt like a hostile, unforgiving landscape, closing in around us with each passing moment. The clinic, my only connection to my old life, was gone, a casualty of their war. My escape routes, once numerous and varied, were now diminishing rapidly, each path fraught with peril, each direction leading deeper into the heart of their dangerous world. My future, once clear and predictable, was now shrouded in uncertainty, a terrifying blank canvas painted with the grim colors of violence and fear. I was trapped, a prisoner of circumstance, my fate inextricably linked to the man I had saved. A moment of reflection, a brief, fleeting pause in the relentless march of survival, allowed me to consider the profound irony of my current situation. A year ago, I was a respected doctor, living a quiet, unassuming life, my biggest concern the next patient, the next medical challenge. Now I was a fugitive, hiding in a forest, tending to the wounds of a man who had once ordered my death, my life irrevocably altered by a twist of fate I could never have foreseen. The bitter taste of irony was a constant companion, a chilling reminder of the unpredictable nature of destiny, the cruel hand that had dealt me this impossible, terrifying hand. The boss, even in his weakened state, still exuded an aura of formidable power, a silent, commanding presence that filled the small, makeshift camp we had established in the heart of the forest. His eyes, though still heavy-lidded with pain and exhaustion, held a flicker of his old intensity, a hint of the ruthless will that had propelled him to the pinnacle of his dangerous world. I could feel his gaze on me, a silent, scrutinizing assessment, a weighing of my worth, my usefulness, in his ongoing struggle for survival. He was a predator, even wounded, and I was, for now, his unwilling prey, bound by the fragile thread of his life. The quiet, chilling understanding that I was now deeply entangled in his world, a permanent, unwilling player in his deadly game, settled heavily in my mind, a cold, hard truth that left me breathless. There was no going back, no returning to the quiet anonymity of my old life. The past was irrevocably shattered, and the future, though terrifyingly uncertain, was now inextricably linked to his. I was a doctor, yes, but I was also a witness, a confidant, a pawn in a game where the stakes were life and death, and the rules were written in blood, a chilling reality that tightened its icy grip around my heart. Cale, ever vigilant, ever watchful, maintained a constant perimeter, his eyes scanning the dense foliage, his senses alert to every sound, every movement. He moved with a silent, predatory grace, a shadow among the trees, his presence a constant, reassuring, yet terrifying reminder of the dangers that still lurked in the darkness. He spoke little, his words clipped and to the point, but his actions spoke volumes, a silent promise of protection, a grim determination to ensure the survival of his leader, and by extension, my own. He was a man of few words, but his loyalty was absolute, a formidable force in a world defined by betrayal. The sun began its slow ascent, casting long, eerie shadows through the dense canopy of trees, painting the forest floor with a pale, anemic light. But the dawn offered no real hope, no promise of respite, only the chilling realization that the new day brought with it new dangers, new threats, new challenges to our precarious survival. The air was cold, damp, and heavy with the unspoken fears that clung to us like a shroud. I shivered, not just from the cold, but from the profound sense of isolation, the terrifying understanding that we were truly alone, cut off from the world, adrift in a sea of unseen enemies and unknown dangers. My medical bag, now almost empty of its most crucial supplies, lay beside me, a stark reminder of the limited resources at my disposal. I had used everything I had, every ounce of my medical knowledge and ingenuity, to keep him alive, to pull him back from the brink. But what now? What if he needed more? What if complications arose? The questions gnawed at me, a relentless assault on my already exhausted mind, a constant source of anxiety that tightened its icy grip around my heart. The forest, though offering temporary concealment, was no place for a critically injured man, and the clock, I knew, was still ticking, relentlessly counting down to an uncertain future. The boss, his eyes now open, though still clouded with pain, watched me with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. There was a silent question in his gaze, a demand for answers, for reassurance, for a clear path forward. I met his gaze, refusing to flinch, refusing to show the fear that still gnawed at me. I was a doctor, and I had done my duty. Now, the future, and my place within it, was entirely uncertain, a terrifying blank canvas waiting to be filled with the grim colors of his world, a world I was now, irrevocably, a part of, whether I liked it or not. As the first rays of sunlight finally broke through the dense canopy, bathing the forest floor in a pale, ethereal glow, I knew, with a chilling certainty, that my old life was truly over. The clinic, my quiet sanctuary, was gone, and I was now a fugitive, a doctor caught in a war she never asked for, her fate inextricably linked to the man she had saved. The nightmare, I realized, had only just begun, and I was now a permanent, unwilling player in his deadly game, a silent witness to the brutal realities of his world, a world from which there was no escape, only a terrifying, uncertain path forward into the heart of the storm. The days that followed blurred into a surreal existence, a constant dance between medical necessity and the chilling realities of their world. We moved from one hidden location to another, always under the cloak of darkness, always with the same grim-faced bodyguards, their vigilance a suffocating blanket. The boss, slowly but steadily, regained his strength, his formidable will pushing him through the pain, his eyes regaining their sharp, calculating intensity. He watched me, always watched me, a silent, unreadable assessment that sent shivers down my spine, a constant reminder of the precariousness of my position, the thin line between savior and prisoner that I walked every single day. My medical role was still paramount, but the unspoken understanding between us had deepened, a complex web of dependence and distrust. I found myself adapting, a chameleon in a world of shadows, my senses heightened, my instincts sharpened by the constant threat. I learned to read the subtle shifts in Cale's expression, the slight tension in his jaw that signaled danger, the almost imperceptible glance towards a hidden exit. My medical bag, once a symbol of healing, now felt like a lifeline, a tangible connection to the person I used to be, a desperate attempt to cling to my identity in a world that sought to strip it away. The sterile scent of antiseptic, once a comfort, now mingled with the metallic tang of fear and the earthy smell of damp soil, a constant reminder of the brutal reality that had become my new normal. The boss, now strong enough to sit up, began to issue orders, his voice still raspy but imbued with an undeniable authority. He spoke in hushed tones, his words clipped and precise, outlining strategies, demanding loyalty, orchestrating a counterattack against those who had dared to betray him. I overheard fragments of conversations, names whispered in the dark, plans for retribution that sent a cold dread through me. I was a doctor, not a soldier, but I was now inextricably linked to his war, an unwilling participant in a conflict far beyond my comprehension. The moral tightrope I walked grew ever thinner, each step fraught with peril, each decision a weighty ethical dilemma that gnawed at my conscience. He summoned me one evening, his eyes, dark and piercing, fixed on mine. "You saved my life, doctor," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion, a flat declaration that offered no comfort, no gratitude, only a chilling acknowledgement of a debt. "And for that you have my protection." The words, meant to reassure, felt more like a cage, a gilded prison from which there was no escape. Protection from whom? From his enemies? Or from him? The ambiguity hung heavy in the air, a silent threat that tightened its icy grip around my heart. My freedom, my old life, felt like a distant, fading dream, replaced by a new, terrifying reality. A life lived under his watchful, possessive gaze. The thought of escape, once a constant, burning desire, now felt like a distant, impossible fantasy. Where would I go? Who would I trust? His reach was long, his influence pervasive, and the world outside, I knew, was no longer safe for me. I was a marked woman, not just by his enemies, but by the very act of saving him. My identity, once a source of pride, was now a dangerous liability, a beacon that could draw unwanted attention, a target in a war I never asked to join. The realization settled heavily in my mind, a cold, hard truth that left me breathless, a profound sense of resignation washing over me, a surrender to the inevitable. Kyle, ever the silent guardian, began to treat me with a grudging respect, a subtle shift in his demeanor that spoke volumes. He would bring me extra rations, ensure I had a warm blanket, his actions a silent acknowledgement of my value, my usefulness, in their brutal world. He saw me not just as a doctor, but as a survivor, a woman who had faced death and emerged, albeit scarred, on the other side. It was a strange, unsettling camaraderie, a bond forged in the crucible of shared danger, a silent understanding that transcended words, a fragile alliance in a world where trust was a luxury few could afford. The boss, now fully recovered, his wounds healed, his power reasserted, began to plan his next moves with a chilling precision. I watched him, a silent observer, as he orchestrated his revenge, his eyes burning with a cold, calculating fury. He was a man reborn, stronger, more dangerous than ever, and I, his unwilling confidant, was privy to the dark machinations of his world. The moral dilemmas continued to gnaw at me, a constant internal battle between my oath to heal and the brutal realities of the violence I was now witnessing, a silent scream against the encroaching darkness that threatened to consume me. My role had evolved from healer to something far more ambiguous, far more dangerous. I was his shadow, his medical advisor, his silent witness, a constant presence in his inner circle. I saw things, heard things, that no ordinary doctor should ever be privy to. Secrets that could get me killed if they ever fell into the wrong hands. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on me, a heavy burden that threatened to crush me, a constant reminder of the perilous path I now walked, a path from which there was no turning back, no easy escape, only a terrifying, uncertain future. One night, as the moon cast long, eerie shadows through the window of our latest hideout, the boss looked at me, his gaze intense, unblinking. "You are one of us now, doctor," he stated, his voice low, almost a whisper, but imbued with an undeniable finality. There is no going back. The words hung in the air, a chilling pronouncement that sealed my fate, a definitive end to the life I once knew. My heart sank, a profound sense of loss washing over me, a silent acknowledgement of the irreversible transformation that had taken place, the complete and utter surrender to a destiny I had never chosen. I stand here now, a doctor in a world of shadows, my hands still capable of healing, but my soul forever marked by the darkness I have witnessed. The clinic is a distant memory, my old life a fading dream. I am no longer just Elena Petrova. I am the doctor who saved the boss, the woman who walks among wolves, her fate inextricably linked to the man who once ordered her death. The future is uncertain, fraught with peril, but one thing is clear: there is no escape. Only a terrifying, ambiguous path forward, deeper into the heart of his world, a world from which there is no return, only a constant, chilling dance with destiny.